And go.
Hey, they've been friends going on 20 years and now stepping into one of the most dangerous behaviors of a lifetime, having an opinion and openly talking about it on the internet. It's Pinche and the Gringo.
And we're back.
Totally back. Like
Yeah.
hiatus.
Yeah, yes. I was on vacation and had a little fun, so it was kind of cool.
Batteries recharged.
Yeah.
Look
Yeah.
good.
Well, I don't know. Today
No,
I was kind of blah because I kind of wanted to be back there.
bittersweet.
Yeah.
How much did y'all disconnect though? Because I saw like one post here, one post there. So I was kind of like, oh man, maybe they disconnected enough to.
Yeah, we really did disconnect quite a bit because um, there's limited cell service in those parks. Like when you're in there, you can't get anywhere. Well, Yellowstone, you can get up. Yellowstone and Paladura, you could get over to like the main gates, and then you can either broadcast from there or catch some cell service, some data there,
That's
but
kind
it's
of
not
like
a lot.
yeah, it's kind of like Balmorhea out in West Texas. Is AT&T works in that park for some reason.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you get close to the main office and you can jump onto park Wi-Fi maybe. But that was kind of the cool thing of you're being if you didn't have AT&T and you didn't want to go up there and hang around the park office for Wi-Fi for some reason,
Mm.
you were away from it. And it was like I have nothing to worry about. I'm 9 hours out into the desert of West Texas. I can't do anything about it. Don't call me.
Wow.
So it's kind of a good way to disconnect, I think, dude. I think
Yeah.
that worked, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Just got away from everything. I did like one work thing, and that was like at the beginning of the trip in Paladura Canyon. And other than that, I stayed away from work, and it's like no more. I'm good.
Like an
I'm
episode of
solid.
RV. Would you have your laptop in the toilet and stuff trying to get work done?
No, it was just my phone. It was like somebody was telling me, "Oh, I can't connect on my computer." I was like, "Well, there's nothing I can do about that."
Wow, that sucks. Have a good one.
Sorry, not really anything that I can do about that.
Have you tried that thing called the help desk? We pay people for that. Jeez, that's nuts. That's cool though. How's the country out that way? I mean, I've been when we cut across New Mexico and over into to Southern California for Born Free, that's probably the most I can recall seeing that part of the country.
Yeah,
So, but that you guys are even further
it's
up.
quite different. Quite different. Going the way we went, there wasn't a whole lot of anything to see. I mean, you can see mountains and stuff like that, but it takes forever just to get out of Texas.
Yeah,
Forever.
that is true, especially at that angle. Because didn't you guys like shoot up through the Panhandle?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
We
yeah,
went
it
up
kind of
through
like we.
Amarillo and then headed up towards up through Colorado, White River there. So yeah, that was cool. But today we're talking about Trump orders back to school, or he's going to cut school funding to the schools. We're also talking about BLM hate crimes and ACA, the ACA Supreme Court ruling, and maybe a couple other things. But we're mainly talking about stuff that's kind of happened recently. So, but we're going to go ahead and start it out, Patrick.
Yeah. Speaking of California, it's we're looking at. So I'm a little torn on what they call this, but essentially a couple, from what I can tell, is wearing Trump supporter shirts. Because that's what you
Mm-hmm.
see. You see the Trump supporters painted this thing, and I'm like, are they really? And then I opened up the photos, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's appropriately titled subject then. Because yeah, if you're throwing down your Trump shirt while you're going out to paint over some street letters, then yeah, you can definitely be called a Trump supporter. But essentially,
Yeah.
these two attempted to paint over Black Lives Matter letters painted on a street in Martinez City, the city of Martinez, California, and they've been charged with not only a hate crime, But vandalism under $400, possession of tools to commit vandalism or graffiti, and then violation of civil rights, which is the actual portion that is considered the hate crime. So I think that's what we said is we kind of wanted to look at is what is actually considered a hate crime in California.
Yeah.
There's 3 different types. It's interference with civil rights by force. Second is by threat. And the third is by damaging property, which is where I think they get this charge from. But it is an extremely, if you're in California, you should be scared of this type of law for its vagueness, not the type of law, but for the vagueness in the letter of the law. Because if we had other high-ranking laws with this type of vagueness, they could be applied in circumstances completely unrelated to the actual bit. But theirs would be along interference with civil rights. I'm assuming interference with civil rights by damaging a property. It requires showing of property damage as a form of civil rights interference, and because of bias motivated by characteristics associated with hate crimes. Some of the elements already seen in hate crimes above are basically replicated here. The person accused of the crime defaced, damaged, or destroyed real property or personal property which is owned, used, or in the possession or occupied by someone else. The person accused knew that the property in question belonged to, was in the possession of, or occupied by the victim of the crime. This is where this thing gets difficult and gets a little hazy for me. Who's the actual victim in the crime here? And I mean, a lot of people could take that facetiously or out of context. But my specific question is, if you had to say this couple versus so-and-so in court, who is that victim in that column? That's mine. That's one of the questions to think of while you kind of ponder the.
Yeah, well,
it's
kind of
what do you
society.
think about this?
It's the society against that couple. What city did it happen in?
It's Martinez, the city of California.
It's Martinez, California against that couple.
I can relate to that because I know we've seen some things where city of versus defendant enter whatever name here. And I mean, obviously, in case you guys haven't figured out, we're not lawyers. And anything in this shouldn't be taken as legal advice.
We already have a comment from Steve Cuneo. I support the Black Lives Matter, but I do feel like they were being made an example of with those charges.
The charge. I could kind of align to that because I agree that the two are like no-brainer ones. The vandalism under $400, which, to be honest, they're lucky it's under $400 because every time I've seen somebody get charged with damaging anything that belonged to the city of any city, they exacerbate it through the aspect of like the government's $10 million toilet seat type of thing. You painted a street. That's vandalism over $1 billion. You know what I mean? They blow that up. So vandalism under 400 is kind of crazy. And then on top of it, could you read between the lines on that and see what kind of value the city puts on the piece of artwork, what they're considering a mural, the street painting, the letters. They're putting low value on it too. But that could be overly reading between the lines. So then you have position of tools. Obviously, that makes completely sense. I mean, granted, if I walked out of a Home Depot with a paint roller and a long stick paintbrush and black paint, every person in California who did that is guilty under possession of tools to commit vandalism or graffiti. But I think that's one of those charges that only goes hand in hand with. So, i.e., you were caught vandalizing, thus you also have the tools. I don't think it could be a standalone thing.
Yeah.
And it is. So let's see, what did they say? So this is from the Office of the District Attorney in Contra Costa County, where Martinez is. So I'm not going to read the names of the individuals, or not in it for that. A local Martinez resident applied for a permit to paint Black Lives Matter temporary mural in downtown Martinez in front of the Wakefield Taylor Courthouse. Permit was approved by the city of Martinez, and the painting was done on July 4th. It's a temporary. I wonder when that were to run its course. There's some extenuating circumstances here, though, too, because there are comments in the news story saying, I think that why they were painting, they were saying this stuff. They were saying some things like, keep this fecal matter in New York. This is not happening in my town.
Mm-hmm.
This is all in audio. So that's something. I think that's something that lends to the district attorney's case.
Yeah.
But it's like, then it also comes into to thought crime. Are they saying keep this crap? What are they saying specifically to keep in New York?
COVID.
Please fence that stuff off. Keep that over there. Well, it kind of plays into thought crime, don't you think? Because what they were saying, I mean, so basically, if you say any comment in that context and during
mm-hmm.
this act, it could be misconstrued as making a racial implication.
But were anybody's civil liberties violated? Because that constitutes a hate crime, right? If civil liberties are violated,
right? Then it would definitely fit that bill. But that's actually how broad that bill is.
mm-hmm.
Is the fact that aside from that one part, interference, harm, interference accused, where was that at? Damaging property.
Damaging property.
The reason why the accused acted this way was to interfere. This is where I think I found it maybe. Was the reason why the accused acted this way was to interfere with or to intimidate the victim's rights or enjoyment of rights secured by the laws and Constitution of California and or the United States. So if me not being a lawyer, if I was thinking in the aspects of prosecution and how this would be applied, is pursuit of happiness. And if this mural was done in that aspect of regardless of the movement, the supports, and all the things, good, bad, and ugly along with that, I think that's where their target would be, right? Because you've interrupted the citizens of Martinez's county, or city of Martinez in this specific county's pursuit of happiness.
And were they citizens of that city?
They're actually residents of the city, according to the item filed by the DA. Happiness. Am I thinking that in the wrong way?
Can't we just all get along?
Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Declaration of Independence, considered part of an unalienable right. So I think that's where they're coming in. Let's look at one other part of this. There are a couple of defenses. A lot of it comes down to bias. So the prosecution needs to connect the person's action with a bias motivated by one of the characteristics associated with a hate crime.
How was it exactly defaced, though? I didn't see that.
They straight up, dude, paint rollered on. It's Black Lives Matter painted out on a long street. I think the letters are probably 12 foot tall. I mean, trust me. Don't ever give me that math problem where using little Jimmy's shadow, can you tell how tall he is? So I wouldn't be able to get that. So I'm guessing they were some very tall letters, and I don't think they like did the whole thing or anything, but the fact that they did some is still the factor. I think they might have been stopped, but they started painting over the B and the L in Black Lives Matter.
But here's where it goes with the thing where I think it was last week where Trump was talking that the Black Lives Matter movement was to be considered terrorists. right?
I don't know if I heard him say something like that. I know I heard him reference
He said
Antifa
it,
in
and
that
then
way.
his
So his son said it
his
too.
whatchamacallit,
Minion number
press
5.
secretary said it.
Oh, press minion number 5. Because
Yeah,
isn't he on the 5th one?
it's a
Keeps
lot of them.
firing them away. So what's
Never.
the possible punishment? And then we're going to look at 2 other cases quickly. So if the prosecution is successful in proving its case, punishment can be, depending on circumstances and acts particular to the case in question. There's a misdemeanor hate crime, has a maximum of 1 year in prison, with monetary punishment to a maximum of $5,000 and a possible additional mandatory community service hours. I think
I don't know if it's going to go that far.
I think this is where we also talked about the fact that some of these folks that are in an elected office they're going to pander, man. They are really pandering to an audience to secure their votes into the next one. I think they would go against. This is the love I
Now,
have.
the Black Lives Matter,
Politicians,
did they get city approval to be able to do that?
Black Lives Matter as an organization or an entity did not, but a specific resident of the county did.
But somebody got permission to do that.
Yep.
And they were like, well, yeah, we're all for it. Let's do it. So it's a couple of its residents are getting upset and don't want that. Well, then don't elect that person the next time you come up for election.
I think we'd have to read more into it as well. But if it's this type of installation, usually it's going to warrant public commentary or approval. And if that may not be the case here, it may just be an elected official saw the permit and this looks good for my voting record if I let this fly. Not saying there's any reason against doing it. And they stamped it off. So where is it? In front of the Taylor courthouse. It was
that's
actually,
assuming...
they did it like the same day it was actually completed.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah, because it was painted on 4th of July, and then they did this later in the day. So yeah, here it is. So July 1st, a Martinez resident applied for a permit to paint Black Lives Matter as a temporary mural in downtown Martinez in front of the Wakefield Taylor Courthouse. And the permit was approved by the city of Martinez, and the painting was done on July 4th. So in the interest of the city is supporting its citizenry, right? And they're supporting the voices that are loud right now, right? I'm just saying that because what I mean by loud is you can't turn on a channel without the focus being turned in that way, in a variety of good, bad, and ugly. But them also looking at, because kind of what if we talked about was it St. Louis? Was it St. Louis that we talked about where they shut down highways and actually shut down a section and said, hey, I think it was actually Minneapolis, wasn't it? And they just said, hey, let's let our people grieve over what's occurred in our city. And the electorate did that. I mean, and that might have been one of the primary reasons behind this not following a normal policy, if they have a normal process. Hey, he put in a permit July 1st. He wants to paint it on the 4th, but we have a 30-day waiting window. And they may have circumvented that in the thought of it going, you know what, this is a good way for us to show that we're standing with our citizens. We understand what they're at, and we're listening.
Yeah.
And they went ahead and granted the permit. So the cool thing is you can't fault the resident who said, man, I want to paint Black Lives Matter on the city street in front of the courthouse. I'm going to go get a permit. Shake the guy's hand, dude. There's a crap load of people that have been like, yo, it's 4th of July, fool. Let's throw down with some paint buckets and some rollers and F the police and the institutions. Let's just do this. And instead, he went about it the right way.
Yeah.
And then it was temporary mural anyway. What temporary means in this instance, I'm sure we could actually look up the public docket or public papers and find out how temporary it would have been. But it's
until it wears off.
Until it wears off, right? Doesn't this play into the more simpler thing that you and I've talked about before too, where we have so many people that plug one ear or act because they don't like what they're hearing or seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just going, I don't agree with that, but it's not hurting me. And I can have
Right.
conversations about it and then going about our day.
Mm-hmm.
Instead,
But it's different when it is hurting you, which is why the Black Lives Matter movement is happening.
yeah, there's so much more to that as an entity, as an organization, and as individuals. There's some of it's being used as an excuse by some
I mean,
people.
is it an entity and an
Go ahead.
organization, or is it a movement?
It's an entity and an organization. And it's fundraising.
Mm-hmm.
And monetarily receives donations, and it's a movement. So it's all these organic things, but I think they're all actually separate.
Like, is BLM
one degree or
trademarked?
another. Who knows?
I mean, is that like is it a corporation or any type of like LLC or anything like that? That would make it an entity, not necessarily that it's just people banding together in harmony and disharmony for a Black Lives Matter movement.
So not guaranteed on the source, but blacklivesmatter.com.
But anybody could have.
Founded in 2013 in response to the acquittal of Trayvon Martin's murderer, Black Lives Matter Foundation Incorporated. So there is a Black Lives Matter Foundation. That's what I'm saying. I think they're threads that tie each faction. Maybe that's not a proper word for it. Tie them together in their similar beliefs and similar direction. One is a physical foundation and it's incorporated. The other is a movement and a mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And I think,
but isn't the majority of it a movement and a mindset? I don't see people reporting to any Black Lives Matter entity.
I'm not connected enough to know if anybody is or isn't.
Mm-hmm.
We can assume. But I mean, obviously, I don't think we have, like, in this week's Tuesday meetings of the Black Lives Matter movement, this is our schedule for protest next week. That I don't, and that's not a statement against organization or lack thereof. It's just that I don't think a lot of it is in that much, like you said, somebody reporting to somebody kind of thing. But the other aspect is there's a lot of folks out there that are taking these letters and the movement and the meaning behind it and using it as an opportunity to be thugs. And by the way, the word thugs was used by people long before Trump said it. But that's what I mean. There are people using those letters as a way to just take whatever agenda they have and
the opportunists.
Be criminal. Yeah, exactly. Opportunists would be a good way to say it. Did you see the Baptist church thing?
I don't like Baptist churches.
I don't know Baptist church either. There are other places I might hang out on a Thursday night for sure.
That's not a place I would go and hang out and stuff.
But
I was hang out and drink some wine and eat some bread, you know.
Talk about some things. But there was apparently a protest and that was a little more. There was it's weird. Like I was saying, there's some validity in it, just like with everything, right? So we can't just say this is just Black Lives Matter. With any movement, any organization, any strong feeling, strong party of people, there is and this plays into all sorts of things, but there are the valid contributors to the vision. There are the detractors of it. They use it more as a label and a way to advance their own agenda, or it's not going in the direction they think it should, so they still use it as their moniker why they do their things. But that's to digress back to it is the resident put that permit out down the right path. How the city
Mm-hmm.
handled it beyond that, whether they circumvented their own process or not, that's completely up to the folks in that city.
Then
And
those people need to
and
do
if you
their
don't
research and not vote for that person that allowed that to happen.
exactly, if you're not happy with the fact that that person stamped off on that gig, then your angst is with that person
Mm-hmm.
and not with what's occurred on a city street, where beyond these headlines, I see nothing else coming out of Martinez, California that screams protest, riots, violence, or anything else. I see a bunch of people peacefully standing up for what's going on, right? Black Lives Matter and the BLM aspect and the things that they had painted in the street, and then celebrating that. Also, and celebrating probably being, this would be in the eye of them, was it painted on that day to show that
So
to
how
be
did they get videotape doing that? Did they take the videotape themselves?
oh no, everybody's got a camera in their pocket these days, so
And
and
they were
it's like
just somebody was just taking it while they
somebody
were doing it.
started
So
filming them.
why
Yeah,
would you do that when you know that everybody has access to a phone that can take video of it right then and there?
I
Because what?
actually
Because them doing that, they didn't have permission to do that. So they're creating graffiti, which whatever the thing for graffiti is.
yeah, they got their charge on that one.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, is also, let's also look at something else that has occurred in other cities that didn't happen here, and that's
They should go and
applauding.
have to fix it.
Right? Exactly. That's your community
That's what they
service.
should do.
Exactly. We're extending the permit, and your community service is you need to paint it.
Yeah.
Now, in a
So
just
we're gonna
world,
hold it there for 5 years, and you have to make sure it's perfect for 5 years.
well, you can't punish the other remaining people of the city in the same way. But let's look at something in amongst all the violence that is occurring. Of these folks who spent their day painting these letters, enjoying the company of other residents, community, and people with the same backings and belief, and these two show up more than likely with having paint and paint rollers, nobody knows what they're doing. Is it possible they're going to come out and highlight the lines and make it stick out more, stuff like that? You don't know what they're doing, and then you start realizing what they're doing. And the fact that these people didn't end up bloody lumps on a sidewalk after being pummeled by the audience in attendance,
Mm-hmm.
is the epitome of the fact that there's still good people here, right?
Yeah.
There's good people in the world. Hey, there's some idiots doing a very stupid thing. We're not going to kill them. We're not going to beat the crap out of them. I mean, it's the applauding to those people of, it's like, you know what, we're going to, and it went the process. Apparently, I guess they were arrested, or I don't know how it went, but the fact that they didn't beat the living crap out of them goes to show a lot of the fact that they were good people at the incident.
Yeah. I don't think it'll go as far as to be them getting that charge, them being, well, they're charged with it, but I don't think they're going to be convicted of a hate crime.
I think that's where, and that was going to our commenter too, about them being made an example of. I could see all three charges going through.
Mm-hmm.
It's the punishment that's applied that will determine whether they're really made an example of. Because I think the DA actually has a case with that, based on the California law, the way we've read it, in layman's interpretation and understanding, it looks like they have a case for hate crime based on, what was that, civil rights? Civil rights.
Mm-hmm.
So let's feed this off, though. Let's kind of carry this off, because we have another one that a lot of people are screaming should be a hate crime.
Yeah.
Is not a hate crime. So we'll see. We got to follow up on this one and see where it goes. I would imagine seeing them, like you said. So this is we'll come back to it, that you don't see them being fully charged with the hate crime, but still getting the full or potential extent of vandalism and the vandalism tools, right?
Yeah.
I see all three being hit, but to a lesser degree. It wouldn't be the 1 year in prison. It might be the $5,000 fine and a community service aspect. and I could see that being.
But here's the thing: is they're going to be judged by their peers. So who knows who's going to be on that jury?
Yeah, if they're smart, they'll take it to jury.
This was going to have to go to jury.
Yeah, it would. It really needs to. I'm not sure what the legal structure is there in that, because I know there are some cases. For example, the one I explained to you offline regarding the guy in Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
The 2 years that he was convicted of, a drone pilot that's got a 2-year probation conviction, that went through judge only, never saw a jury. Because if it would have gone to a jury, guaranteed it, I don't think it would have made it where it did. But I'm leaning on all 3 charges being applied, them found guilty on all 3, and then I just don't see the maximums being applied as far as prison time. We'll see. We'll keep an eye out and come back to it. So going to the other one is we have a guy who pulls up. So there's let me double check age here. 12-year-old. Yeah, a 12-year-old boy is on the sidewalk, street dancing with friends, just listening to music, having fun. And this is TMZ's quote, although I kind of agree with the wording used. The scumbag sucker punched a 12-year-old boy who was dancing on the sidewalk. The footage is he legit comes from behind on the teen, totally from behind. They pull up in a car. He's a passenger. They stop. He gets out. He totally cold cocks the kid from the right side out of nowhere from behind. This was a 12-year-old kid being hit by a built grown man. There's levels of cowardice in that can't even fathom. And people are screaming for it to be a hate crime. So what is he actually charged with? Because he's been charged. He hasn't been caught. But the charge is currently 2 felonies. Felony assault in the 2nd degree and felony child endangerment in the 1st degree. Cape Guardo, Missouri. So let's see the state of Missouri, if we can hopefully find this quick. What do you think about this stuff? I mean, did you see the story? You want me to link you the story so you can kind of get an idea a little?
Yeah, link me the story so I can
drop that in there. I forget the chat is always hidden on this thing. There we go. Take a look at that. And I am going to look.
I mean, what was he saying when he punched him? Or did he say anything when he punched him?
No, kid's just dancing. And out of nowhere, I mean, the victim nor the assailant said anything, as from what we can tell. He just jumped. The video, because I caught the video while I was surfing through it, but essentially the car pulls up past the teen, stops him quickly. The guy gets out, runs up, sucker punches him, and immediately jumps back in the car, and they drive off.
Oh, he's wearing a Flash t-shirt.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I now see that.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought this was like flipped around.
Let's see, Missouri.
It wasn't a built white guy that punched a black kid. It was the black man that punched a white kid.
Right. So
should that be considered a hate crime?
Yeah, and that's where everybody's screaming is this should be a hate crime, because it appears on the surface to be race related, right? We don't know if these two have any connections. We don't know.
But it's being considered that just because of their color?
That's what it sounds like most people are calling for it to be. So the offense of assault is pretty much the same as it is here in Texas. It's attempts to cause or knowingly causes physical injury to another person by means of deadly weapon, dangerous instrument, or reckless cause, discharge a firearm. Penalty of conviction for assault felony charge can differ. A person can be imprisoned 5 to 15 years on a Class B felony, 7+ for Class D, 4 for a Class E, and fines resulting up to $10,000. But that's what a lot of the folks. So people were showing that's the thing that when your BS meter should be going off on Facebook is what's making the rounds right now is a picture of the folks in California painting over the Black Lives Matter letters, and they're like, this, they said, it's a hate crime. And then they showed that very harsh picture of him getting hit that you can see in the thumbnail there. And they say, but they don't think this was a hate crime. So there are people trying to twist the narrative. The thing is, when you read the DA, and this is what I really like about the DA is they didn't screw around. They just came flat out and said it. Missouri laws and each state's law is different a little bit in how hate crimes are applied, or whether they're a solo charge in some cases, or whether they're escalations to an existing charge or aggravated type of add-on differs by state. But essentially, the police department said that they are understandably expressed the desire to see this person charged with a hate crime, but in order for them to apply a hate crime in the state of Missouri, it would reduce the degree of the assault charge. So the police have charged him with the more damaging, the stronger.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
That's conscious law enforcement thinking right there. But that's where it gets
but when you're looking at it, and what it's saying in here that was unprovoked, it's just him punching a guy, him punching a 12-year-old kid. But that's it. We don't hear anything about him saying anything derogatory, do we? I didn't see the video.
But in that, since we don't, I can't exactly find. Actually, I bet you I can as well. Let's see if Missouri's.
I mean, if he went and said, "I hate you because you're white," and then punched him, that's a hate crime, right? Would you agree?
Yeah, that comes in with explicit force and shows bias.
Right.
So it would be hate crime through force with bias if we use the California definition. I'm kind of trying to find Missouri's definition to see.
Maybe he just didn't like his T-shirt.
It's a Flash T-shirt.
I haven't even seen this.
The crime based on bias equals hate crime. In simplest term, a hate crime must include both hate and a crime. Kind of like Missouri's law explanations here, but they're along. It appears they're very much along the same lines. It's interesting to me that those in law don't see hate crime as an elevator to a crime. So essentially, if you have a felony assault, that's your crime, right? And that has its own punishment, which then is magnified based on the fact that the definition of hate, of bias, or by force or whatever, is tacked on top of that. So 10 years and then said crime, but because it's done with hate and malice and proven by the prosecution that hate was involved, your window of 5 to 10 turns into 10 to 15. And the law is just not applied that way, which is really interesting. It seems like they want to use hate crimes as a totally different.
I think what they're doing is if they put the hate crime in and he doesn't get convicted of one of the other two, then the hate crime would have a lesser sentence than the other two felonies.
Yeah, and that's what that police department looked at. They're like, we're gonna go this way. Holy cow, man! I didn't realize we were this far in. So in the same thing, I think the police department acted appropriately this one in the fact that it not being a hate crime on paper, right, so to speak, but by the aesthetics, the visuals of it, it appears to have that. We don't know what the other biases are in this, if there are any, but they charged appropriately.
Yeah.
Felony assault fits. It's just weird. It'd be like, so what would be a hate crime? Jaywalking, yelling explicatives?
Mm,
I'm not sure what Missouri's classification would. That's what I'm saying. How does hate crime not apply, and how does it reduce?
like when you're lynching somebody.
Well, that's, I mean,
Like
geez, yeah.
which happened on what, July 4th
New Jersey.
in
I did see that
Oregon. In
story.
Oregon.
Oh, in Oregon.
Yeah.
We'll have to look at those two next
In a
week.
national forest in Oregon.
Oh, the attempt
Yeah.
wasn't successful. They caught it on video. I mean, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, well,
the
yeah.
fact that, yeah.
Well, they
But
had him
yeah,
pinned
so
up against a tree.
yeah, there's that, and then there's a similar instance where a person was found in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. We'll bring those topics around. We'll talk about them next week, see if we can dig into them a little bit more. So there's definitely a weird thing with the fact of how a hate crime is actually considered its own thing, but it must have a crime with bias to be considered a hate crime. So for me, it just sounds like an add-on to an existing offense. So if felony assault has its own punishments, it's felony assault magnified by a hate crime.
Right.
Which then increases that aspect.
But
so
maybe it's not that way there.
No, and that's what's interesting. Both of it, California and Missouri. So I'm curious. So
either way, he's gonna be. He's.
Oh man, he did the.
He's going to jail.
He did the ultimate thing when he heard he was in trouble too. He showed as much bravery as he did hitting the kid from behind. He's running scared and he's hiding. So.
12-year-old.
Let's see.
Wow.
So let's go for one more. We're going to go out of the country on this one.
Okay.
So we're going to go up to the land of syrup and we're going to Canada. So in Western Vancouver.
I was only 9 hours away from there.
That's not bad. It's actually, you're closer to there than you are to Texas at that point. Yeah. So essentially, West Vancouver police painted and unveiled a pride crosswalk.
Right. I saw this.
So this is a rainbow crosswalk representing pride. Okay. I'm going to go out on a limb here, but there is a possibility for this to be defaced unintentionally.
Yeah.
So I just drove my car across it and it left tire marks. I just drove across it and I left tire marks. Am I now a criminal because I defaced it? Because let's go into what it is.
Yeah, but you just don't.
Let me spill the details. So apparently 2 individuals in a Mustang did a burnout leaving the stop sign at this intersection and left tire marks across the crosswalk.
Right.
So West Vancouver police, they say it's very upsetting, and for whatever reason, the person chose to leave a gesture of hate on a crosswalk that stands for the exact opposite. So I'm looking at the photograph of this gesture of hate, and it appears to be a burnout.
Mm-hmm.
Not a brake lock burnout. So if y'all have never done burnouts, a couple of different ways to do them. But if he had brake torqued and sat on top of it and burned his tires out on it, that's purposeful destruction of the piece that's there. Right. He did a burnout across it, and the tire marks continue out into the street.
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying that a burnout is a gesture of hate. The car sped away and hasn't been found. I don't have a lot of faith in the Canadian police at this point, especially in Western Vancouver. Because,
but you could have done a burnout anywhere else, though.
You can read the license plate in the damn pictures. I hope they don't have a hard time finding them. But but so we're saying that just because this is where they did the burnout, in a crosswalk where other cars drive across it. So, oh my God, dude, I looked down. I spilled my yogurt in my crotch. I'm doing 40 miles an hour. I look up. There's a stop sign. Oh my God, that's the Pride crosswalk. I better just blow the damn stop sign, because if I skid on top of it, then I've committed a hate crime. I've left a gesture of hate. I'm just saying this is kind of far-fetched. It's like thought crime.
But that's not what happened though. They purposefully did it. Do they have video of it?
It appears they have something, but so I don't know the entire video, but
But
let's
you
see.
and I have both. You and I have
ever
both
not
come
done
to a hard break. Yeah.
Have you ever not done a purposeful burnout? I mean, I can't recall in my days of having a vehicle that did very good burnouts of it ever not being purposeful. At many stop signs, at many street lights, at many parking lots and donuts, and I'm just saying it's flimsy.
But it's just the fact that they did it right there. They could have done it anywhere else, but they chose to do it right there.
Do we want to go out on a limb with this just a little bit?
Yeah.
The kid, let's say the kid has 5 tickets for doing burnouts and has display of power tickets from all over the city of West Vancouver. Is he just a kid doing burnouts in his Mustang then? Because he has a crap load of offenses doing it? Or did he leave gestures of hate all over the city?
I guess we'd have to answer that if he had other stuff like that in other places other than that. Or if this is the only offense that there was, then yeah, it's kind of a hate crime, I believe.
Okay. So the only reason I'm leaning into this so much as being very flimsy is the fact that in this same mindset, everything's a hate crime. We're going to have a moment of silence for
here's the thing.
Reason, and you let out a ripping ass belch.
Mm-hmm.
You've just performed a hate crime because you didn't observe the moment of silence for said whatever. That's what I'm trying to lean into. The other things that this stuff expands into, the precedents these things can set. Now, if they can get them in court,
I think that's reaching though for a burp.
Right. Well,
I mean, it's a bodily function.
So back to this one.
It's a bodily function that you can't necessarily help. He made a conscious decision to do a burnout on that thing.
So that's
on
the
LGBT crosswalk.
Let's digress this. Let's back up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
This entire story is a crock of shit from the West Vancouver police.
Mm-hmm.
Because they come out going, so the police unveiled the crosswalk last week at the intersection of 16th Street and I'm gonna trash this street name, Esquimalt Avenue, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the statement should have stopped. It says they've identified it. So police in West Vancouver say they've identified a suspect after a driver defaced the police department's newly unveiled Pride crosswalk. The police staff inside the station heard a loud and sustained tire squealing outside just after 4 p.m. the day before. And then they discovered the tire marks across the part of the crosswalk. Okay. This is such a vital crosswalk that they didn't discover that the tire marks had occurred until the next day. The burnout starts before the crosswalk at the stop sign, the white line for the stop sign, and then continues from where a normal rear tire would be at a stop sign through the white stop here line, across the crosswalk, because it is a crosswalk. It's not like you can avoid it. And then continues on into the street that they were turning onto. And that's where it should stop. West Vancouver police have identified a person who did a burnout on a crosswalk.
Mm-hmm.
This is attention seeking from this police department and this city. And they'll make examples of these kids versus this being.
But this is a very tumultuous time, and I think they should. because there
Right.
was a
So we're going
conscious,
to
there
use
was a,
this time now as an excuse
well, yeah,
to punish these kids heavier when we wouldn't have done it before. And in 6 months, we might not even do it
but
again.
there wasn't a rainbow crosswalk before,
There's been rainbow crosswalks done in the States already in multiple places, and I'm sure they've
but
had
not
burnouts
there,
on them. Not
but
in that
not there.
specific, that's what I'm saying. So we have a specific city and police department who decided to put people on blast for a burnout.
Yes, because you purposefully go through and make an intention to
I walked
destroy
across this crosswalk and spit my gum on it as
property.
I was walking out.
But you can see it and you purposefully do it. Right?
So you're guilty of a hate crime because you spit out your gum on the sidewalk. On the crosswalk as you're walking across it. You have no malice in your heart. You have no hate whatsoever. But as you're walking across this crosswalk, you spit your gum out.
No, that's two different things.
Okay, I did a burnout because I have a badass Mustang and I'm a teenager. And I just happened to go across this crosswalk. I never once looked down at the color of the asphalt when I was smoking the tires on my Impala.
Yeah,
And at this age, I highly doubt
you have
I
the
would
right
do
to
it
do
then.
whatever you want, but then you suffer the consequences.
Exactly.
And right now, the consequences are high.
And they shouldn't be any different than they would be if it was yesterday or the day before. If we're using now to punish people at a stronger level, we are a pathetic country. We are a pathetic institution. We are pathetic across the board because
he's still destroying property, doing a burnout.
It feeds into the statement of the really BS things that occur.
But is the hate crime going to hold? Is the thing. It's not going to hold.
Well,
it's very hard to convict somebody of a hate crime.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So that it was, what was the actual, they identified the suspect after the driver defaced crosswalk. I'm not going to say anything else about it. So let's say they defaced it. It's very upsetting. For whatever reason, the person is chosen. They don't say who quoted that. Oh, that could, hold on. There's a linking story to it of another one that's actually defaced after being repainted. Okay. So we have two different instances here, but I've got to send you the pictures. If I don't send you the pictures, it won't. So this is the story that's linked to. Look at those thumbnails. And then look at this. So also, let's be clear. I'm just being an ass and being devil's advocate here, right? I'm making you fight for your argument. But they don't. Here's the other link. So
No, dude, that's a hate crime, dude.
the first one I sent, hell yes.
Yes.
Falls directly into a hate crime. This dude sat there doing sustained burnouts on it. But that's the thing.
The second one, maybe not. But this one here,
yeah.
I would definitely see that as a hate crime.
Yeah. But now this is
but the second one,
reason I still argue it, right?
It doesn't look like he knows how to do a burnout.
Yeah. So, so the reason I'm still arguing is on larger precedent, right? Not these specific instances. So let's look at the fact that these are victimless crimes, right? Which is a horrible term, right? I acknowledge that.
Right.
Not specific individuals were hurt or injured in any way, shape, or form of this. However, you have essentially grabbed the highest flagpole you can and run your I'm a complete piece of flag up it, right? Each one of these individuals has just done that, no matter what. Now, across, does this warrant a year in prison and $5,000 fine?
Yeah, I think it does. And I think it does just because the fact that a part what's being noticed right now, it's something that should have been in place already. So whereas stuff wasn't considered a hate crime maybe 20 years ago, and it is now, it should have been 20 years ago.
True. I could agree to that depending on the instance, right? I mean,
So
obviously there are a
now,
lot of things that have been let
so
pass
now
20 years ago.
everything has been let slide for so long, which it shouldn't have.
But that's my
So
point.
so
Not
now
everything.
these are the rules. By God, you abide by them. How are you going to get people to stop doing that and defacing stuff like that?
Well, for one, you fire the assholes in the transportation portion of these cities who put something, regardless of what it is, in a place that cars drive over. That's just stupid. That's like putting a flag underneath a place where you know pigeons take craps. That is the biggest failure of intelligence I've seen in a long time. If you want to paint something to celebrate pride, let's put it in places where
Let's
it
put it
matters.
in places
What's
where
the
everybody's going to see it and everybody has to go through it. And you
so
have to
now we're
go
going to
through
force
that crosswalk.
citizens. We're going to force citizens into accepting things by making them do this,
No,
making them
it's
go
not
through crosswalks.
forcing them to notice, it's allowing them to recognize.
You just said forcing. We're putting something in. I mean, because why isn't this not just a very large, really good portion of a 25-foot section of sidewalk in front of the police station? Or
I'm
really great
They're
universities
not just
and
doing it so
institutions
they
did it
can
on
like get
steps.
somebody on it for a hate crime. That's not why it was done.
No, but that's what I'm saying. It's like why a crosswalk? Give me
Because
the
they
existential connection that makes the crosswalk more valuable than the stairs of the police station, the sidewalk in front of the police station, the wall in front of the police station, hanging a pride flag
how
with
often
your
are you
flag.
going to notice any of that other stuff? You come to a stop, you're going to see that thing and you're going to see that it means something.
So we're going to
You
allow
can
the opposite.
pass stairs and then
So we're going to allow the other side of this argument, like Hillsborough Baptist Church, to paint a crosswalk too, then, right?
did
Like
they
the worst people we can think of when it comes to being acceptable of people's sexual choices, because I was stupid and I had to be educated, right?
Mhm. But it's just
But
a rainbow crosswalk. They're not saying anything. They're not putting words on
but it
anything.
can't just be a rainbow
Westboro would
crosswalk.
go
We're
and
talking
put
about sending
words
someone to
on
prison.
there.
We're talking about it's not just a crosswalk because we're planning on sending somebody to prison for a hate crime because they did a burnout.
Yeah, and destroy property, which you would do a burnout. What would happen if you did a burnout anyway? I don't know what it is there.
Display of power, usually.
Mm-hmm.
Don't ask me how I know that. I don't know if I
But
ever got charged with that, but I got in trouble a few times for
but
burnouts.
when you get permission for something like that, then it becomes an art installation approved by whatever city approved it.
Yeah, I want to know
Right?
more. Yeah, and you know me. I'm trying to take things back to the plain definitions of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I'm still just one of those people who in the planning meeting would have been like, wait, we're gonna put this on a crosswalk? Give me the connections for that. I mean, obviously, what is a crosswalk? It's a connection between 2 points for a destination, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that can be its own thinking. But that's because I am the viewer of the art, not the artist. So what is the point from the artist's point of view? What's the city's real purpose in doing this? I'd have to know more on it. You know what I mean? To read, I'd like to
Mm-hmm.
hear the reasons behind people choosing the crosswalks as a display. Is it due to something that occurred to a member of the LGBT community? Because we do have a lot of, in a way, memorialized instances for victims of exactly that, and what turn out to be hate crimes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, so
We
is that?
digress because we must move on.
Yeah, that's true.
We digress.
Well,
So the
either way, it's
yeah.
let me cap it off, because I played asshole advocate on that one a little bit too much. So, all right, if we got the kid doing burnouts all around the neighborhood and he's just hauling ass and all that, fine. Well, okay, we might be able to look at it a little bit differently. If he purposefully picked out the sidewalk, which, if I was a prosecutor, based on the evidence at hand, it does look like he intentionally went there to do what was done. We don't know
Okay.
if this is an
But he
adult.
did it over an art installation, which is like a statue that was approved by the city.
So we have a whole ton of hate crimes pending in the United States then, because somebody defaced a monument or a statue. Oh, wait, that doesn't fit because the statue isn't in the narrative that's popular right now. Is
Well,
that
some of
what
the
you were
statues
thinking?
should have never been there.
Then no statue should ever be there. Remove all art. Remove all statues. Remove symbols of any person of perceived value.
But there's a difference between art and
Dude, you can find evil in Gandhi if you look for it.
well, yeah, you can.
Exactly. So we're going to remove everything. I lean this back into the whole aspect of like Nazi Germany, where it was remove the history, destroy the books, and re-educate. 1984, those type of thinking. That's where
But that's been happening for years already. This is nothing new. Just because it's happening to people that were thought great, but were actually fallible. If people looked into the Alamo, if
Dude,
people looked into the
that
Alamo,
implies that there are people around that are not fallible? Please. Everyone's valuable. Pick your hero, put them on a pedestal, thus they be fallible.
yeah, there's degrees though. There's degrees in things that shouldn't be crossed for human decency.
And who decides what those are? I'm not against them, right? I'm just saying.
But
10 people in a room.
Yes. Yes, but we definitely need to move on.
Yeah,
we definitely need to move on.
So, nonetheless, more than likely, probably charged with a hate crime in Canada as well. We'll keep an eye on that one. Depending on circumstances, it kind of fits the bill.
Yeah. Yeah.
Moving right into
the next one, the ACA, Affordable Care Act Supreme Court ruling that birth control now has a religious exemption. So if you are if you're any type of a religious entity or your company has some religious beliefs, they can choose to not cover birth control under your health care.
Yeah, that's
with that
something
ruling.
to that effect. So essentially, Affordable Care Act mandated that insurers in the U.S. are required by law to cover at least one form of birth control from each of the 18 approved contraceptive categories. Mm-hmm. So as an insurer, by law, you must cover one of these in your funding. But as an employer, you can, with religious exemption, opt out of providing this. This is where I get thrown off, is this states that it allows employers to opt out. Trump the Trump administration announced in 2017 that it would allow more employers to opt out of providing the no-cost birth control coverage required under the law. And it wound up going to all the way up to the Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't believe that's no cost.
This has a lot of consequences when it comes to this.
But yeah, hopefully for the employer. I mean, and I say that in two ways. But
some of it is going to be stupidity as well. All right. Let me break it down this way. So,
yeah.
People that are going to have a problem with birth control, right? Like religious groups or religious entities that have a problem with birth control,
churches
will probably have a problem with pro-choice. They're going to be pro-life, right? Most likely.
Yeah.
So not giving people access to birth control is going to make there be more what am I trying to say? There's going to be more why am I at a loss for words of what you do when you don't want a kid?
Unwanted pregnancies?
Unwanted pregnancies, and then they're going to do abortions.
Yeah, potentially.
There's going to be more abortions. So what they're doing is going to create what they hate even more, which I don't.
Yeah, there's so many aspects of this because also, so for me, what I tie this to at first when I was thinking about it, I was looking at Trump's essentially allowing employers to opt out based on religious grounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it is definitely really screwy because it also plays into other aspects. We're forcing businesses to do certain things versus allowing free market to handle it on its own. And what I mean by that is, so we don't have universal health care. We have the Affordable Care Act, which thankfully portions of it like pre-existing conditions. That was probably the biggest thing. That's how that's the importance I put in the Affordable Care Act. The
rest of it is, it kind of sucks.
Yeah, I mean, I really thought that
it shouldn't have forced people to get insurance if they didn't want it, and it shouldn't have penalized you for not having it.
Yeah, it missed the.
Those are the main things. It missed the point.
It missed the mark. I think it still brought things to a better position, especially around pre-existing care. But also, there's one aspect of the contraceptives things for women that we can't, and you might even have more knowledge to this than I do in some aspects, but it's not just the surface level of avoiding unwanted pregnancies, contraception. Mm-hmm. It goes deeper in the fact that a good number of contraceptive pharmaceuticals handle a number of other afflictions that a lot of women deal with.
Yes,
varying ages,
with some of the hormonal changes in your body, it and some of the things that happen in a woman's body, it definitely can help things. They don't necessarily just give it as birth control, but they give it as to help.
It's been prescribed for migraines. I've seen it prescribed for migraines. I've seen it prescribed specifically for hormonal imbalances. We've also seen it provide for its surface level name as a contraceptive. For me, it's like, why does this not just fall into the standard route of prescription?
But here's a way around it. The doctor just says, okay, this person has has headaches, has migraines. I'm prescribing this not as a contraceptive, but as
Preventive medication for
preventative medication.
that issue. Well, that's the other thing that it plays into. So it did force.
I don't think this is gonna like. I think they're gonna need to overturn this.
That's the thing. I mean, so essentially, Supreme Court said that it's not legit.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So in that concerns me because of the pre-existing condition thing. Because pre-existing conditions for the longest time of my employment determined why I stayed with an employer and what employers I went to. Because staying with a major institution or corporation virtually guaranteed that the insurance I was getting was so subsidized that pre-existing condition wasn't a problem.
Yeah.
But if that were to be stripped, I'm not so much in that position where it would affect me directly, independence-wise. Like my dependents I don't have anything in that aspect any longer. But for folks who do, if we can say that, well, they can opt out of that, well, then the insurer says, well, religious exemption. Whatever your appendix problem was last time's not part of our deal now. So can we just start stripping away the ACA? Because I think it's very simple for an employer who has a.
But when you do that, it discriminates against sex.
Which part? Say that the contraceptive portion?
Yeah, this ruling discriminates against sex because it's for women. That's how I think they can overturn this.
I think they had looked at that though. But I mean, what I was going to lean into was the fact that if you're an employer and you think you have and you as the owner of the company and the all-being power of your company don't want to honor an insurer's requirement by law to have this one of these 18 contraceptives covered, don't give your employees insurance. You believe in it that strongly, take away the insurance benefit. Will you have employees shortly thereafter? Probably not. But it's a matter of health, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but otherwise let the free market decide. You don't want to do it, fine. Don't come off with this BS of, oh, well, it's based on, or no, please let us know your religious bias up front so I can decide to spend my money elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So the market decides, like, I don't shop at Hobby Lobby. I found a ton of things that they have through different groups. And it's like, hey, I picked this up at Hobby Lobby. And I was like, oh, I wonder if Michael's has it, or I can get it at Amazon or whatever. So I'm not going to shop at Hobby Lobby. Same thing.
Yeah, I find better stuff.
Chick-fil-A.
I find better stuff at Michael's and Joann's.
Yeah, but it's in that same mindset, right?
Yeah.
The key reasons I stopped shopping in those places, because that used to be like one of the Sunday visits over on Bandera Road.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, we're over here. We'll jump into Hobby Lobby and see if there's anything we can grab. And now it's like, no.
No.
I'm not going to.
Not Hobby Lobby.
And it's the same along the aspects of Chick-fil-A. My money speaks. I'm just not going to spend it with you. You're a bigoted organization, or not even calling you a bigot. You have your beliefs. I have mine. They don't align. Therefore, I've just chose not to spend money with you. Simple, plain state. I don't have to call you, which is unfortunately in this society is somebody's different opinion means you have to give them an insult in return, it seems, for some folks. But no, I don't. This one's really curious because
is that not discriminating against women? So next thing they're go like, oh well, we don't cover Viagra either, so you have to buy that full price from now on for men.
Yeah, how do we look at discrimination in that aspect? Do we look at discrimination? This makes me sound like an idiot, but I want to kind of level set. How do we determine discrimination, right? Discrimination is essentially the fact that all created equal, all receive the inalienable rights, life, love, pursuit of happiness, etc. Same treatment, same services available, and anything.
Yeah, pursuit of
And
happiness.
anything
They
away
don't want
from
to have
that,
a kid. That would make them unhappy.
or worse, health matters, can't have one, or like we also said, migraines, other health issues that that those specific medications do the work for that other medications do not.
And
So
and something
it's
like that
curious
wouldn't
that
work on a man. It wouldn't work on a male.
I think you're right. I think it actually fits a discriminatory nature perfectly. So what the Supreme Court essentially just said is you can discriminate against people because of your religion.
For that aspect, yes, they did. Even though they just made a ruling, didn't they? That that sex also included LGBT, or is in under the same umbrella.
That in an employee, that you
Can't
could not
fire
terminate
you.
an employee based on
Sex, but sex includes LGBT.
yeah, so essentially extending the protected category of discrimination, which is normally against you can't discriminate against ageism, sex, or race, obviously, and then even religious preference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's an about face with a decision of similar nature so quickly.
It really is, and I'm surprised I haven't heard more about it.
So when you've hit the highest law in the land and the highest law of the land disagrees, what is your option? Because the Democrats have already said, like, man, nails on a chalkboard when Pelosi opens her mouth. Same thing when Trump opens his. But she's already screaming that they're going to repeal it.
I think they can, but they have to get, I think to do that, they need a 2/3 vote.
In both? Would you need majority or supermajority in both? I'm curious.
I don't know them both. I think in just one.
That's why we have these conversations, man. I wind up reading so much more on government functionality and relearning stuff that we either weren't taught in school or I just slept through. I think I want to read the opinion on this one and the dissent.
Yeah, because it is the highest court, but there's still checks and balances with that.
Let's see. Supreme Court. Is it opinions, I believe? Something to that effect. Opinions by year. Let's just go to Supreme Court opinions. Opinions, the Supreme Court of the United States. Opinions of the court, opinions relating to orders. Several types of writing, information about opinions, where to obtain Supreme Court opinions. Print. Oh, come on now, man.
What happened?
We run to the highest court of the land, something supported by our tax dollars, our efforts, and you hit a paywall for an opinion. Official opinion sources. You can get them by print, apparently by writing to the United States reports, so you can do it by mail. There are some unofficial opinion ones. LexisNexis, that one might work. Legal and professional. Case opinions. Yeah, this will take a little bit of digging to
Yeah, we
actually
need
get
to
it.
dig into that more.
Yeah, I'd like to read the opinions on that because we would hope that they looked at that as being a discriminatory practice against the health of women. Actually, I wonder if you would be able.
Maybe they didn't.
Well, that's the question. What cases were cited for precedents against it? Would it not? I wonder if even, and I could be speaking way off base here, so if anybody's in the comments can definitely, but would you not be able to run a thread from this to Roe v. Wade?
Um, it's it's stretching, but it's possible.
Yeah, Roe v. Wade was the court ruled that the Constitution of the United States protects a woman's liberty to choose to have an abortion without excessive government restriction. I would almost see a thread tied to that.
Kind of.
Because it's covering the fact that you're giving that permission. Giving that permission. Oh, I know some
That
people
that
would
a
slap
woman
me for
should have
that.
the choice to
Yeah, that it's upholding the fact that a
prevent
woman's
a
liberty.
baby, to prevent a child.
Yeah, why would you not be able to use Roe v. I would definitely see Roe v. Wade almost as a precedent to that, because
Yeah,
by
I mean it's.
putting this in place, you're allowing government intervention,
Mhm.
because the government's, and maybe that's where the connection gets thin, is because it's allowing the employer to do that with the insurance company. I think this would be a totally different precedent if it was coming from the insurers as the instigators versus the employers. Since the employers are one level away from the insurers, it's kind of a different type of protection. Because remember, prior to ACA, then an insurer could have contraceptive coverage or not. The insurer basically wrote their packages without pertaining to law. So as
Right.
an employer could look at the package and go, Hobby Lobby's healthcare guys or persons going down the list, contraceptive, no contraceptives allowed. We'll take Plan C. They could do that through free market choice.
Yeah.
ACA takes that away by forcing all insurers to at least cover it. But I just don't see. I don't see how the businesses, and this is, I don't own a business then to that level, but it almost seems like the business would be able to say, you know what, the insurer's not breaking the law by covering it, as long as they offer some plans that cover it and then a plan that doesn't, then the religious company has the choice to choose the plan that doesn't. But then I think that brought us in a full circle, because I think that's where the lawsuit came about, is that someone sued an employer for not covering, and then that traveled to Supreme Court. I think we just circled back on what that root cause was. So then this is the way of closing that loop to avoid those types of lawsuits. And this would take a lot of booze and a lot of reading.
Yeah.
But I'm
don't
going to
know.
read the opinion.
I don't really see a point to this one, and like I said, I think it's just discriminative.
I think it's stupid, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's completely asinine in the fact that when you have an insurance plan as an employer and you're offering it to your employees, who's paying for it? The employee. The employer supposedly subsidizes chunks of that.
Right.
But I don't know. I always read those papers that came in and said your employer covered $59 bazillion of your insurance plan last year, and you paid $1 to be a complete crock. It doesn't fit. My employer paid that much for my insurance, but I only paid this much. I never quite read that right. It doesn't. I don't.
I think it used to be a lot like that before. It's not as much like that anymore. I think your job used, I mean, some of the larger corporations used to cover it more than they do now.
And that's where I think I'm leaning on this, is the fact that just with anything else, when a company has to pay for something, who legitimately pays for it in the end? The employee or the customer?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, employee or customer. So it's the... I guess that is
this
that
is whack.
is that so
This is
so
whack,
is that
man.
do they get away with this in the fact that because you can tell your employer's insurance offering to go stuff it, and you can go out on the open ACA market and get your insurance from there, which we know is much more out of pocket, much less, much weaker coverage as well, from everything I read up on. Because when I looked at going self-employed a few years back, and I looked at all of those insurances and started to price that stuff out.
Yeah, you'd have to get yourself attached to like a Chamber of Commerce, and then that's where you get some better deals on insurance.
Yeah. So let's travel one more. I mean, I know we're way over where we wanted to stop.
We got to talk about this last one, though.
Yeah, this last one is the definite must, and that's essentially we might not get to the second part. Maybe we'll revisit it, but let's send everybody back to school with our uncontrolled pandemic still ongoing. And then the second part, which we may or may not get to, but also plays to it, is the fact that a large number of for-profit, non-for-profit, whatever universities are battling with immigration and nationalization, who passed something saying they are not going to offer any new F1 visas or continue to extend or honor F1 visas.
I don't know that we're going to get to that when we get.
Yeah, so students who are basically here for educational purposes, unless you go full online. So, but let's look local. So what do you know about this so far? Because I think you started the conversation on this one.
So what's happening is Trump is ordering like people go back to school, or he's going to cut funding. Now, this oversteps his bounds because he shouldn't be there to make that determination. He can't hold back the money from the states. The states are the ones to make the determination if they're going to open or not.
Yeah,
which it's looking like in Texas that they want to open.
This is so. At what point, and to go on to that same direction, at what point does federal level intervention come in when the states are proven to be failures at their own processes? Because if Texas is a great example, right?
Mm-hmm.
Greg Abbott, hey, I'm going to open this state up. Okay, that's fine. And he opens it up with a decent amount of restrictions, kind of like quarter throttle. And then he decides, hey, to hell with this, man. Kick open them floodgates, buddy. Let's do this. And releases essentially almost all restrictions. And so now we're some of our hospitals in this town, and our state in general is considered like one of the hottest spots for the diseases going up. Right. And using that as just an example, and we're talking about let's send people back into closed spaces with a disease that's not even fully understood yet in schools that can't even maintain the state requested maximum capacity per classroom.
Well, and in the same thing, he just closed the bars again, didn't he?
Yeah, we've basically we've gone backwards.
He's closes the bars, but he's going to open the schools. So you're going to trust a kid more than an adult to do what they're supposed to do.
Well, I mean, to the same aspect, it's
kids are not going to social distance.
How many of us had kids in elementary school and kindergarten?
Mm-hmm.
It was, if you could see it, and no matter what, your kids brought home disease from elementary school, from kindergarten. It was like, hey, Dad, I'm home. I picked up a cold from little Jimmy. All yours. Here you go, Pops. I love you. And now we're
I just wouldn't let them hug me. I was like, no, get away.
Don't touch me.
Get away. Don't touch me.
Wipe your nose. Don't use your sleeve. all the fun things that I do miss.
Cough on your own sleeve.
Kids.
Don't cough on me.
Yeah, use your own sleeve. But I mean, in that same aspect, and so let's look at the other bit to this. And I said this when school first stopped going. I will decide if my child goes back to school. I decided if my child went back to school before this pandemic. Mm-hmm. Well, and actually, in my case, with one of mine, she decided. She's like, no, I'm not going back. I'm homeschooling. So she decided. Based on overarching things, I would like to respect my kids' wishes if they said, hey, let's go back to school. But I wouldn't want her to go back to school. I deal with elderly folks.
But we did some awesome things with online learning through the last part of the school year.
Yeah, there's some growth in that.
There was some growth in that. And there's also some of them saying is like, we can probably do both, which would open up a lot more in public schools to get more people into public schools and get them out of these charter schools that are kind of like messing with the public schools things. Because the thing about public schools as opposed to charter schools is public schools are more regulated than charter schools are. Charter schools, there's a lot of things that you can get away with, and they don't have to keep your kid in there if they're not doing well. If they're not doing well, they can kick them out.
Yeah, or if they're just a heathen.
In public schools, they cannot do that.
Nope, you got to take every one of them. I'm seeing a comment here. The Texas guidelines will let parents choose remote or in-person classes. Mask to be required in school. This is a headline, so I don't know what the accuracy to that is. I'm trying to find the actual guidelines, because implying that it's the parent's choice for remote or in-person also would imply
that's what the
districts
school
is going to offer both.
That's what the districts are offering and saying right now.
Yeah, because I mean, I can see the possibility of hybrid classes, hybrid classes being more of a college level type thing, but you work 3 days at home, you go into school 1 day a week, 2 days a week. So that's definitely a possibility to limit exposure in some cases, but you still have the transitional spaces, which are the problem, and the volume of students that we have in our public schools. Right. So you would need to have enough active classroom space to reduce the population down to the acceptable number that fits within social distancing, wear a mask, and the students stay in one classroom for that entire period of day. Then you have staged release plus staged incoming, because you can't take 3,000 students and have them all walking to class. And it's
going to be a logistical nightmare. It really is.
I could see January, February 2021. I think the fall of 2020 is already off the books as a possibility. The dates that should be evaluated for, hey, are we going back to school? Or in our cases, in some of them, are we going back to the office? And some institutions, mine specifically where I work, has already put us, our guidelines are no, we are not doing anything until December 2020, and we'll be reevaluating up until that time, but we are not until already set at December. So we should be in the same with our public school mindset. Because we already we have public health care officials and nurses and doctors and stuff that are exposed on a daily basis doing things to maintain their own health. And they're kind of going down.
Some of them are catching it themselves, yeah.
Right, so they're fighting that battle as it is on front lines, and then we're going to put already a very finite, underpaid resource, our teachers, in the exact same positions.
Hazard pay.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, if you're forcing them, hazard pay.
And I think didn't you also mention that there was a protest or something that may be coming up in Austin?
Yeah, on the 16th, July 16th, it's a Saturday, I believe. They're doing Texas teachers are doing a protest, and they're going from, I think, TEA headquarters to the Capitol. In their cars. They're just going to do it in their cars. They're not going to do it. They're not like banding
Not
outside
marching or any
together.
of that stuff.
Yeah. They're actually social distancing with it. I'll probably be going to that to kind of go and support my wife with that. So yeah, that's something that they're doing, and they really shouldn't open until it's safe. And right now, it's not safe. Everybody's assuming that it's going to go away, but they assumed that it was going to go away like in a week.
Yeah,
And it didn't
that
go away.
argument persists. That argument persists of the, hey, the survival rate of this is this, and the infection rate of this is that, and it's the.
Because I
I'm
think
not, I mean, I'm looking at scientists, and this just seems more into the long-term aspect of it, because wasn't it supposed to be the heat of summer in Texas was bound to kill this disease? Well, it didn't, and we're still dealing with it. So we've now dealt with COVID through cold environment,
yeah,
hot environment.
yeah.
So it's a
And to
persistent
put something
illness.
in perspective, the numbers work out to 95% of the people who obtain this survive it, and they get over it.
What is that
Which
survival
leaves
based
that
on?
for 5%.
But what is that survival rate based on? Is that survival rate based on the same thing of 95% of people who get the flu? Because 95% of people who get the flu obviously survive it as well, but they survive it through cans of Campbell's soup, some Gatorade, and some NyQuil. Is our 95% of those who have survived this all at the higher percentage of being stuffed in an ICU on a ventilator? That sure as hell isn't sustainable. Regardless of how equal the numbers are between traditional flu and COVID, you can't tell me that we ain't got anything to worry about if the 95% that are recovering are doing so because of what to me is an extreme amount of medical intervention.
But they do that as a last resort. The ventilation they do as a last resort.
That's supposed to, I mean, that's what I'm saying. So what is our
Yeah.
survival rate based on? Is our survival, or let's not use survival rate. Let's look at more as recovery, right? So what is our recovery rate based on? What is that science based on? Is it based on so-and-so caught COVID,
It's based when you
so-and-so was
become
tested, so-and-so's show is positive, so-and-so experiences these symptoms through X number of weeks, so-and-so no longer tests positive and is no longer showing system 14 weeks out. All home care, all self-care, or not. I mean, that's curious. We don't have those numbers, I don't think. I wonder if we have that kind of
It's
data.
people that are tested positive. Everybody that's tested positive that aren't dead yet, that have recovered from that. Because I think the incubation is between 2 and 3 weeks, but after you tested positive, it's another 2 to 3 weeks after that fact that you no longer become contagious.
Yeah, that whole.
And that's when you've recovered, and that's when you're considered recovered. So it's saying like 100 people that catch this, five of those people die. Putting that in perspective. Because they're saying, oh, it's not a big number. It's not a big number. 5 out of 100 is a big number.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people are looking too much at the surface level. The fact that we have flu season, right? That's what we call it, because we're commonly going to see the flu spike early fall-ish, right through the winter, and then we tend to see the taper off as we come into warmer months.
But this year, COVID has gone past what the flu has been doing.
Right. So this is the longevity type of sickness, which I think people are disregarding in their stuff. So it's that lack of concern that makes me it's the lack of concern of leadership, people who make these types of decisions, that is probably the most concerning. I'm happy and comfortable in the fact that my employer is looking at this very seriously, and the decisions that have been made are very conscious. And you've talked as well. It's the communications we've had from leadership in our employers
for COVID
has been,
and Black Lives Matter, for
yeah,
either one of
on
those
both of
things.
these topics. But speaking specifically on the COVID aspect, the contingency plans that have been put in place, the treatment of employees has been stellar. And it's unfortunate that we're not seeing the same conscious thinking in the public sector, because the guidelines that are put out by TEA, where'd you go, guidelines? I was on the specific guidelines for them. Here we are. It was any parent may request that their student be offered virtual instruction from any school system that offers such instruction. So if my school system doesn't offer it, can my kid enroll online on Northside? No issue. I don't have to deal anything except do the usual paperwork and prove ID and provide at least 98 versions of a CPS bill with my name on it. And here's my driver's license, and here's the birth certificate, and here's blood, and here's urine. Can you register my kids so they can be online virtual?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not even mentioned in this aspect. So what if your school, which I would say probably specifically was it Title I? Lower income school systems. Technology was already an issue. What are they doing? We're risking our most vulnerable portions of our population. Folks who already deal with just poverty in some instances.
Yeah.
Now it's like, you got to send your kid back to school. Because if you're not sending your kid back to school, then you're running into issues of law.
Right. But here's what happened. Here's what happened today. Trump actually backpedaled on the threats to cut school funding today.
Oh, yeah. I forget, man. We always need to wait at least 15 minutes after he opens his mouth, because he's going to backpedal.
But yeah, but even saying it from the first thing, but that still doesn't change what Texas is going to do.
No, this is
that's
exactly
the thing.
From it.
Because Texas is the one that's going to make the determination if that's going to happen or not.
Practices to respond to lab-confirmed case in the school. I think the other aspect here is we have to look at all the auxiliary positions that are not directly related to the function of education. That without physical in-school presence, a large number of employment is removed as well.
Right.
So job hardship, bus drivers,
janitorial.
Yeah. Well, actually, on a bus driver aspect, yeah, 90% of the actual role is removed. I've been seeing a lot of the buses around my neighborhood parked, and it's to provide Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
There's the buses with the Wi-Fi on them, so that's good. But we only have a CDL certified person driving the bus to that location, and then several hours later picking it up. So their primary payroll function is diminished. It was almost completely, if not completely, lost. Janitorial staff is reduced severely.
Yeah.
And then we have maintenance, district maintenance that gets
Well, maybe
reduced.
janitorial, depending on the school, there's like maybe 2 or 3.
Yeah.
So
So I
like a
mean, we
middle
have
school.
janitorial for individual location, and then I think most maintenance is usually district provided.
Hmm.
At least in my district, that's what it seems as. Employees of school systems, like employees of any organization, must continue to meet the work expectations set by their employers, subject to any applicable employment contract terms. That's probably one thing a lot of teachers are looking at right now with their contract, because what does it say in those contracts?
You know the funny thing about it though, the teachers unions aren't allowed in any of these talks about when the teachers are coming back.
No, I mean I mean, the automotive industry didn't start inviting in their union folks until the union was making a strong stand to stop and do things. So, but yeah, I want to see what happens with it for sure. We definitely need to see what happens with Texas. At this point, I wouldn't be comfortable with it.
It's too early.
My kids
Still
know.
too early.
And that's just specifically for the fact that the knowledge that's out there, what we're being provided, the things that people are trying to do for your own choice of prevention or lack thereof, whatever you choose, that's fine. The risk to my elderly family members, my elderly neighbors, and the people that I help out, that's too great.
Mm-hmm.
I can't risk getting one of these people sick because my kid went to school and brought it home. So we'll see.
We will see.
We'll revisit the ICE one too, because I don't see them backpedaling on that. So let's carry that into episode 8, because as usual, we did really good about stopping on time. I don't know if we'll ever stop on time.
No.
Maybe that's
There's
not
too much to talk about.
So let's do back to school local for episode 8, giving you guys a preview of what we're going to do in episode 8. So we'll kind of come back on this topic and we'll see what's happening with the F1 visas at that point. We'll also revisit a couple of the hate crime items to see what's happened in the process of law, if anything, on the cases we mentioned here originally. And then we'll see what we have as far as highlights from the ACA opinion of the Supreme Court. I want to look because I do believe that most of those opinions actually cite the cases that were cited by both sides in the argument, usually on what supports their arguments. And then usually I've seen other lawyer channels, legal channels, when they read through those opinions, it states, usually in some cases will state the justice will say why they feel or don't feel that one supports or doesn't support their opinion. So we'll see if we can find some of those ties and bring those through too.
Very cool.
And then, of course, all of the shenanigans that we can find to pull together between now and next Thursday.
That happens, yeah.
Guaranteed.
Something crazy is going to happen.
Yeah, same stupid channel, same stupid time. It's going to, yeah.
Yeah, but thanks for checking us out. If you haven't subscribed to us, please click on that subscribe button. Next time we go live, hit that notification icon, and I'll let you know the next time we're going live. But thanks for checking us out. I'm Pinche.
I'm the Gringo.
See you later, guys.
Take it easy. Have a good week.